What if I told you that our modern school system isn't broken, that it's actually working exactly as it was designed to, but, and here's the catch, that its original design had almost nothing to do with genuine education? That's the explosive argument from John Taylor Gatto, a man who climbed to the very top of the teaching profession only to turn around and try to dismantle the whole thing. Today, we're going to dig into his story and his stunning critique of American schooling.
All right, so here's our roadmap. We're going to start with the man himself, this celebrated insider who became the ultimate whistleblower. Then we'll uncover the historical blueprint he says our schools are built on. We'll expose the 6 secret functions he argues are the real curriculum. And finally, we'll tackle the big central question his work forces us all to ask. What is education really for?
Okay, so to really get the weight of what Gatto is saying, you have to understand who he was. This wasn't some outsider with an axe to grind. This guy was the ultimate insider, one of the most decorated and celebrated teachers in the entire country. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. He was named New York City Teacher of the Year, and then he won it for all of New York State. We're talking about one of the biggest, toughest, most demanding school systems on the planet, and they held him up as the gold standard. The best of the best.
And look at this. His career was just incredible. 30 years teaching in the heart of Manhattan. He wasn't just in the classroom either. The guy was a force of nature. He built one of the city's most successful fundraisers, got over 1,000 of his students' apprenticeships, and his expertise was so valued that places like NASA, Apple, and Columbia Business School were asking him to come speak. He wasn't just part of the system, he was a star.
And then, right at the absolute peak of his career, when he had all the awards and all the respect, he did something nobody saw coming. He didn't just quietly fade away. He made a loud, public, and dramatic break with the very institution that made him famous.
He quit his job. On the opinion page of the Wall Street Journal, in an essay he called "I Quit, I Think," he basically declared war. He said that the school system he dedicated his life to was a destructive force, one that was designed, in his view, to break up families and crush a child's unique spirit.
And this right here, this slide is the absolute core of his argument. On the left, you've got what we all hope school is for, what we as parents and citizens want it to be. But Gatto said, no, look at the column on the right. That's the real goal of the institution of schooling. Not intelligence, but obedience. Not opportunity, but predictability. It's not about creativity, it's about management.
So you have to ask, where did this hidden agenda even come from? According to Gatto, it was no accident. He claimed that the basic design of American public schools was literally imported, a direct copy of a system built in 19th century Europe for a completely different and, frankly, much darker purpose.
He called it the Prussian blueprint. Now, Prussia was a highly militaristic state, and Gatto's point was that their school system was never about creating free-thinking individuals. The goals were clear and simple. Produce obedient soldiers who would follow orders, docile workers for the factories, and a general public that was easy to control.
And get this, it was designed from the ground up to sort people into classes for life. You see here, the vast majority of kids, over 90%, went to the people's schools. Their job? Learn obedience and basic skills. Then you had a small slice trained to be the managers, the engineers and doctors. And at the very top, a tiny 1% was groomed to be the future leaders and policymakers. Gatto said it wasn't a ladder, it was a cage, a caste system.
Okay, so how does this old Prussian philosophy actually play out in a modern American classroom? Well, Gatto kept digging, and he claimed he found the smoking gun, the actual playbook, in the writings of a highly respected Harvard educator from the early 1900s. He points his finger right at this guy, Alexander Inglis. Inglis was a big deal. Harvard still has a lecture named after him. But in his 1918 book, Gatto says Inglis just came right out and explained the 6 real unstated functions of modern schooling. And here they are. According to Gatto, this is the real curriculum. Let's walk through it. First, the adjustive function. Teach kids to react to authority without thinking. Second, the integrating function. Make them all as similar as possible so they're easy to predict and manage. Then, the sorting begins. The diagnostic function is to figure out each kid's proper place in society. The differentiating function is to train them only for that role and not a step beyond it. The fifth one, the selective function, is chilling. It's about weeding out the unfit. And finally, the propedeutic function. Train a tiny elite to take over and run the whole system for the next generation. Just notice what's missing. Critical thought,
Creativity, individuality, it's just not on the list. So, if Gatto's right and this has been the real design for over a century, what are the results? Well, here's where his argument gets really sharp. He says the system isn't failing, it's actually succeeding brilliantly at its intended goal.
This is maybe his most famous and controversial line. He claims that the primary lesson of modern schooling is dumbness. Now, he doesn't mean a lack of raw intelligence. He means a state of learned helplessness, a kind of confusion and dependence where you can't think for yourself or solve your own problems.
And for proof, he'd point to data like this from a major literacy survey in 1993. His interpretation was that after an average of 12 years in school, the vast majority of American adults, a staggering 96.5%, couldn't really read and understand complex text. This for him was Exhibit A, that the system produces a population dependent on experts to tell them what to think.
And to show how this dependence is taught in the real world, Gatto had this perfect little story from his own classroom. It just perfectly illustrates how the system crushes common sense with bureaucracy.
So he had 3 small holes in his floor. Kids were dropping pencils through them. A simple fix, right? Nope. His request set off this insane 8-step bureaucratic train reaction. Forms, managers, priority codes, warehouses. All of this just to get someone to come look at the holes. For Gatto, this wasn't just a funny story about red tape. This was the system in action, a system designed to teach everyone that you're powerless and you have to follow the procedure no matter how stupid it is.
So, after tearing down the entire institution of schooling, Gatto's work really brings us back to the most fundamental question of all. If that's what schooling is, then what is real education?
He drew this brilliant contrast. On the left, you've got the library, his symbol for real education. It's a place for quiet focus, where you connect with a single passionate author and you're trusted to find your own way. On the right, you have the classroom, his symbol for schooling. It's about distraction, conformity, and being told what to think by a committee. One path leads to independence, the other to dependence.
And this really is what it was all about for him. True education is an act of liberation. It's about finding the courage to engage directly with the greatest minds who ever lived, on your own terms, without a teacher telling you what it all means. That's when you become truly free.
And so that's the question Gatto's incredible journey leaves us with. It's a tough one because it challenges everything we've been taught to believe. Is the institution we spend the first 2 decades of our lives in designed to set us free, or is it designed to manage us?
And that's the powerful, unsettling challenge from the teacher of the year who came to believe that the very system he had mastered wasn't meant to build you up, but to keep you in your place.